everybody, to a new episode of Podcast on the Brink. And this is our fourth straight week of IU basketball-centric guests. We started lead off with Brian Evans, followed by Steve Green. Last week we had Scott Dolson, and this week hitting cleanup, we've got Dane Fife. Welcome back to Podcast on the Brink.
Cleanup, huh?
What would you rather hit leadoff?
Probably second or third spot, maybe fifth, but cleanup, that's a lot of pressure. Are we expecting maybe the third hitter to be Andre Dawson, National League All-Stars, 1987 RBI baseball?
Are you a baseball guy?
Yeah, actually, Andre Dawson was fourth. Benito Santiago was third. Ryan Sandberg was second. Tim Raines led off. Eric Davis was fifth. Mike Schmidt was sixth. Andre Galarragas at seven. A guy named Pedrique was eighth. And then I usually started, National League. Wasn't good. I can't remember who it's. It might have been Sutcliffe. Sutcliffe would start for me.
I was a Blackjack McDowell guy growing up.
Well, he wasn't there in 1987.
Well, yeah, that's true.
I mean, if we want to go when you grew up, that was a heck of a White Sox team.
Early 90s?
The Big Hurt, Bo Jackson,
yeah.
Ozzie Guillen. Woo, I got that. So here's a funny story. Gene Lamont was their manager for quite some time during those years, at least when Bo was on the team. And Gene Lamont was the catcher back in 1973-74 75 for a gentleman by the name of Dane Fife, a young fireballer from Clarkston, Michigan. And that was in the minor leagues. For the Minnesota Twins. Interesting enough, their manager back then was a man by the name of Gene Lamont, who managed the Pirates, the Tigers, who else? The Marlins, maybe. Jim Leland. Jim Leland. You know the name Jim Leland?
I do.
So Gene Lamont, I know you can appreciate, probably knows Blackjack. I've got a pennant with that whole White Sox team because Gene Lamont, we went to see him when they played the Tigers, and I've got that whole White Sox team, their autograph, on a pennant, the White Sox pennant. And I think I probably got Blackjack on there.
So were you a Tigers guy then growing up?
For the most part, but I loved Andre Dawson, so I guess I was a Cubs fan. And they were on all the time because of the Superstation. WGN. And so we got a lot of the Chicago stuff. We saw that fella, Jordan, and then a lot of Cubs games, too. But I'm not a Chicago sports fan by any stretch.
Who are your professional teams? Do you have ones that you root for?
I mean, I'll go for the Detroit teams, especially the Lions. The Lions are my team. The Tigers are my team. I would go back and forth with NBA, but I'm with the Pistons now. Then obviously the Red Wings. Who's not a fan of the Red Wings, right?
Right. Yeah. Of course. Except me. I'm more of a Chicago guy, so I'm not a Red Wings fan. So
it's all right. I got to say I like the Pacers too, though. I do like the Pacers a lot.
NBA is different, I feel like, because it's such a star league at this point that I found like with my son, he's not necessarily a fan of teams. He's like a fan of players. So he has like his 5 or 6 guys that he likes to watch. And, it's different. I feel like with that than other sports.
I've never heard of that. I guess I like the Bulls because of MJ. Let's see. I like the Sixers because of Barkley growing up. I don't know. I think maybe we tend to be that way when we're young. We might have to check your son a little. What's his name?
Colin.
What is it?
Colin.
We might have to check him. Like, wake up. You know, we can't just do individual. We got to root for the individual and the team.
Yeah.
I mean, check your ego, Colin. What is he?
It's a good point. I'll have to play this for him. It's his first mention on the show. So
how old is he?
He's 10.
He's got to check his ego at the door. I mean, if you're into that individualism, that individual stuff, let's play one of those sports, Colin. Wake up. Let's go. Can't be a basketball fan and then only like one player. Yeah, I like the team.
So we talked to you about 3 weeks ago in your introductory press conference. What's the adjustment been like over these last 3 weeks, I guess, three plus weeks, kind of getting acclimated to the new situation there? What have you learned?
Well, I think learning the players on the current team is very important, and making sure that for all intents and purposes, they understand that we're here to help them, we're here to serve them, and yet they have responsibilities to the program, to the family, to their families, to themselves, that should always be at the forefront of every decision they make. And I know that sounds like a canned answer, but I think you and I know that as youngsters, even when we were young, we made mistakes similar to the ones that potentially our own player, the players currently could make. And so we take that into consideration, but we also take into consideration that this has been a tough year for them. It's been a tough year for everybody, but it's been a tough year for them, for the current players too. There are a lot of expectations. I think there's always high expectations for most Indiana team, for every Indiana team. And it was just a tough year. And you couple that with COVID, you couple that with health issues, with families. It was a tough year. So what I've learned is they need a break. Our players need a break. Everybody needs a break to be able to go home and really replenish and kind of revamp themselves and come back with a peace of mind and a clear mind that and more or less rediscover why they came here in the first place. And so taking care of them is important. The other part, what have I learned? We've got to fill our roster with the appropriate personnel. We don't just need to fill out 13 scholarships because we have 13 scholarships. We got to make sure that that we put the right people in the right places to give our team the best chance to win. Otherwise, the housing market stinks, at least for a buyer. The town has really changed in a good way. I'm really pleased to see the new food spots. The people are amazing as ever. This is just a great time in my life to come back, and my family, my wife Blair, and a chance for our two young girls to come back and learn kind of what shaped their mom and pops.
So I want to go back to something you just mentioned, it being a tough year. And I think with how quickly the season went by this past year, and there was obviously starts and stops for a lot of programs, not just in the Big Ten, but everywhere. But you were actually kind of in the middle of all this, obviously at Michigan State. You guys had some pauses with COVID. And, I think that's one thing I think everyone was so excited to have the season, right? And whatever we can do to have a season, and we got caught up in the games, but maybe we didn't think enough about the mental health aspect of everything and how it was for the players and the coaches. I guess, what did you take away just from the season in general? I know you were happy that the games actually were able to be played, but managing the players through having to be tested every day, not knowing if a game was going to be played up until, hours before it actually happened. What was that experience like? And maybe can you put into a little bit more context for those who weren't living it on a day-to-day basis, what it was like for players and coaches alike?
Well, the COVID aspect was fine as far as the testing, the protocols. That wasn't a big deal. Going in, testing. Now, I personally, contacted COVID. I came down with COVID, was infected with COVID, whatever it is.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't experience, the unimaginable symptoms that some people did, but the COVID aspect was fine as far as dealing with the protocols, adhering to the mask mandates, the testing mandates, all that stuff was fine, but it was the destruction kind of around us that was really a problem. We got the social injustice issues. We have, at Michigan State, and a little bit here, I won't really get into, but we had, there were a lot of loved ones who either struggled during this challenge or who ultimately, we had the death of some very important, close people in at least the Spartan family. That was just devastating. And a lot of situations, 3 or 4 that were just by complete surprise and totally unexpected, where one of our players or one of our coaches lost a loved one, either by seemingly COVID or just something else. And it was, so you talk about the mental health. I think that's for us, for our team, where the mental health issues really wore us down, because it seemed like every time we'd start to feel good again, somebody lost a family member or something major in the world or in our country came up. And, we can say that, that kind of stuff happens, but it just didn't stop. And they were so polarizing and so impactful that we couldn't help but wake up every day. And I'm sure it was this way for a lot of people around the world, but couldn't help but wake up every day and just not feel like we were ourselves. And I can't imagine as players, because they put so much pressure on themselves, these student athletes, they put so much pressure on themselves that in many cases they don't even realize it, that most of the stuff they've come up with in their head, it's not real. And so, we try to take that into account, and yet we play well, or we don't play so well, we win, we lose, and we still have a job to do. And when that job is not done, there's a price to pay, and there's things that happen that you don't feel good about as a coach, and you certainly don't feel good if you're on the receiving end, like a player, like somebody getting demoted, somebody losing minutes, somebody not getting what they thought they were going to get out of the experience. And so there were a lot of factors, but I think you said it. Basketball created some normalcy, getting in every day for our players, for our coaches, and just getting in the routine that we've all been used to. That really helped. And, the reward at one point at Michigan State, we didn't think we were going to make it to the tournament. And we did. But then we look at the new situation here, and this is a group that I felt like was capable certainly of making the tournament, but they didn't, and they didn't have that silver lining. And that's something that, for us, we've got to deal with and make sure our players understand that they played a major role in this too. And the fact that they're a good enough team doesn't mean it's on the coaches completely. Everybody shares blame, and our players need to understand, here's what we think you as a team and as players need to do to right the ship. That was really long. I apologize.
No, it's good. I think it's very interesting. One other thing I just wanted to ask you just about the season, because I didn't go to a single game this year because we got one credential. I have a student that writes for me that lives in Bloomington, so he went to all the games. So I was on the Zoom press conferences watching from home. But from the bench as a coach, what was it like playing these games with little to no atmosphere? I mean, I think you had family there at some point, and I don't know if you guys played in – I know Indiana played at Florida State where they had fans, and then obviously the Big Ten tournament and the NCAA tournament maybe had a little bit. But for the most part, it was just, a couple hundred spectators. How big of an impact do you think that had on games specifically, and was it weird, I guess, playing games like that?
Well, it was weird until the ball was thrown up for coaches. Until the tip, it was strange. But I got to think it would impact the players significantly. As far as I was watching a game from 2 years ago where Michigan State was playing at Indiana, and just listening to the Assembly Hall crowd, it's second to none, and that is how I've always felt, just because it's just built for basketball, and the impact of a momentum swing, of a dunk, of a 3-point shot going in, it can change a player's psyche so quickly, a team's psyche, and it can drop the opponent's psyche so quickly that I think it does play a role with the players. I wasn't sure on that, but really thinking about it, as a coach, you just get in a groove and you're coaching the game. You're not really caught up in who says what or the crowd or anything. But as a player, I think it plays at least a minor role in some, but a major role in many cases that can really help a home team with a momentum swing.
So when you decided that you wanted to take on this challenge of coming back to Indiana, how long did it take you to reach that decision, and who did you want to talk to be certain that you were making the right move? Because you had a great situation at Michigan State. You're working for the best coach in the Big Ten for the last 25 plus years, most successful coach. You got a chance to win the Big Ten and go to a Final Four every year there, and you're coming to take on a challenge at a program that hasn't been on par with what Michigan State's been. So how long did it take you to come to the decision, and who did you kind of seek counsel with to make sure that this was something that you ultimately wanted to do?
Well, from a bird's eye view, I think it was conceivably a lateral move. But the reality, talking to my parents, talking to my wife, Blair, who went to school here, who I met here, and Coach Izzo, the reality was that I've made it pretty clear that this is my dream job as a head coach, and I tried to get the job in both when they hired Coach Miller and when they hired Coach Woodson. And I'm not ashamed to talk about it in that light. And was I disappointed that I didn't get the job? Yes. Did I understand? Yes. And when they hired Coach Woodson, my major sticking point when asked about the job and who needs to be hired, I felt it needed to be someone with very, very close ties to the program. And I don't want to get into the semantics of former player versus not a former player. I have my reasons, and nobody's going to change my mind. So when I found out that Coach Woodson was hired, I was excited. I was disappointed that I didn't get the job, but I was excited because that was one of my major reasons or major sticking points in what the next head coach should be when asked, when given thought. So I wasn't sure that Coach Woodson was going to, have any interest in bringing me on for the reasons of, well, he wanted to be the head coach. Is he going to come in and try to be the head coach if he's an assistant coach? So when Coach Woodson called, I wanted to make that very clear that he was the head coach and I was the assistant. I was on board, or if I were to come on board, I was coming on board to serve in an assistant role. And I wanted to make that clear because I wouldn't want to have to feel like I'm looking over my shoulder because someone wants my job really bad. That would not be a good feeling. So when I was talking to Coach Woodson about that, it became very apparent to me that he wasn't bothered by that, and that his ego was very, very small. And I appreciated that about him. And so he offered me the job and gave me a couple days to talk it over and think about it. And talking to Coach Izzo, my family, my parents, my wife, my brothers, it became very clear in my mind that it was okay. It was okay to leave Michigan State for the reasons I did, and it was okay to come to Indiana for the reasons that I was coming. And, mainly I wouldn't come here for just anybody. But one, it was the first time I'd been offered a job here. And two, it was for a former player that I knew had a reputation as a great basketball coach, a very good person, and someone that loves Indiana. So there'll be no compromise, as far as doing the right things that can help Indiana basketball succeed. And
go ahead. Sorry.
And that's what I knew. That's what I thought. That's what I wanted. Go ahead.
How obviously you're at Michigan State for a long period of time, but you went to Indiana, so you have some interest in how the program does. I'm just watching kind of the ups and downs of the program since you've been a former player. What has that been like for you? And I guess I know you didn't want. I don't want you to explain why you wanted a former player because I get that, but I'm just kind of curious how. I guess how disappointing or frustrating was it for you to see this kind of prolonged period of kind of ebbs and flows for a program that I think most of us agree could have more potential than what it showed over this sustained period of time?
Well, I think from a coaching perspective, the disappointment and frustration is from a different lens because we know that we don't just become bad coaches. We might become a bad at putting the right blend of personnel together.
Mm-hmm.
But we also know that we're dealing with 18 to 22, 23-year-olds that they've got a lot of people in their ear. They've got a lot of distractions, and one year a player can be excellent. The next year the player can be worthless. And that's not to say that any of our players or Michigan State players actually, in effect, did that. I'm just giving you a frame of reference that it doesn't just come down to, a Tom Crean, a Tom Izzo, and Archie Miller being a good coach this year and a bad coach the next year. There's a lot of moving parts and a lot of variables, and we didn't have a great year at Michigan State. We struggled. We barely made the tournament. And does that make Tom Izzo now, he's lost his edge, he's now a bad coach? Nope. I know what went on in our program. I know what cost us. And yes, coaching played a role in it. But I also know there's many variables that would just, it's kind of a death by 1,000 cuts. And that's really where, you lose or you getting to a groove where it's tough to get out of. It takes time. And what's amazing is things can change so quickly, good or bad. Like our worst team, our least talented teams. When I was there, our two least talented teams made it to the Final Four. The 2 years that we went to the Final Four, our two least talented teams made it to the Final Four, which is incredible if you think about it. I mean, we had elite talent and didn't make it to the Final Four. We had 4 or 5 pros, NBA players, and didn't make it. And in some cases, we had 1, if not 0 pros. 1 pro, and we made it. So there's a lot of variables, but I know this. It is a different perspective. The frustration's different. It's probably a little more balanced than yelling at one player or yelling at the coach. It's a little more balanced, the frustration. It might even be frustration with the media as well. Along with maybe the athletic department. So it's just a lot more balanced. It's spread out.
So from an IU perspective, and I can only speak for myself as somebody who's covered the team since, I've been coming to games about 10 years now, but I've never felt like from a media perspective that we actually knew what was going on inside the program. And so when you're trying to form opinions and write things, and you're coming from the perspective of you don't really know what's going on in practice and you don't know what's going on with X player or Y player, it's hard to, because obviously I'm not a coach and I've watched a lot of basketball, but that doesn't make me qualified necessarily to give a strong opinion, but people want information and they want opinions. And one thing that really stood out from the discussion that you had with us beat writers 3 weeks ago is kind of giving a little bit more transparency in terms of what's going on behind the scenes. Obviously there's different layers to that, but how important is it for you to have fans and media to be a little bit more informed and know maybe the players a little bit better moving forward, so that when people are giving their opinions or reacting to things, that they have kind of a perspective to come from?
Well, I think that I think Coach Woodson would say the same thing, as we view this as this is everybody's team. We just coach it. Everybody doesn't have say, but everybody, we rely on the media, we rely on the fans, we rely on basketball minds to help us win. To lift us up when we're down, to trust that what we're doing is the right thing. I mean, we have a responsibility to not just maintain, not just grow, but stay up with keeping this program as one of the top programs in the country, if not the world. And it's big shoes to fill. And, like if we're not getting better every year, then we're not, we're probably going to be held accountable to some extent. But when when the media, when the fans kind of walk with us step for step, we give them the information that allows them to trust that what we're doing is the right thing, and the mistakes we made them, we put it out there, we understand, we've informed. This is the type of program that, to me, has to have that. And there'll be times where, that I'm going to come and probably toilet paper, if not your living quarters, maybe your room if I can get to. I toilet paper your mic, maybe that picture in the background. But I just think this is a giant family that has a true vested interest, and I guess I can feel the frustration from that standpoint. But it's always, it takes two to. I know you can't do the tango, so it's maybe a slow dance, 90s style. It takes two to slow dance, but it still is, Alex. It's a role that everybody plays, and I guess my goal, along with Coach Woodson's, I think certainly would make sure that you understand that you do play an important role in the success of our program. Never tell you how to do your job, but I think it's important that we recognize that we can help you do your job even better by giving you important information that doesn't compromise the integrity of ourselves, our program.
Right.
But it's everybody wins if we're all in that type of sphere, especially when it comes to communication and transparency. And yes, this is a game, but there's lots of people who rely on this game as far as putting food on their table.
Right. Absolutely. One thing that I've been asked a lot about is, and I can't answer the question, so I'm going to ask you. There's been photos and videos shared on social media with these, I guess, workouts that have been going on the last couple of weeks. What, if any, insight can you share on those and how things have been going? I guess with I don't even know the rules for sure of what's allowed, but there's a certain amount of time I guess you get to work with players and kind of what's been going on there.
I think the theme is, skill development. Let's, for lack of a better word, let's tighten up certain skills, certain basics that are lacking. And it's not it's not to put fault or blame on anyone other than we're trying to develop our personnel. And we would do this if this were year 5. We would do it if it were year 3, and we're certainly going to do it in year 1. So the first part is we want to do certain things that are easy fixes. Okay, like Trey Galloway, his shot tends to get a little flat. Am I stating the obvious there? But it's Trey. I need you to make sure every shot you have that ball up in the air with the right trajectory.
Mm-hmm.
And if you don't, you're going to do 1,000 push-ups. No, it's not that. If you don't, get it right. So just little examples. Passing, we don't need that. That pass here takes Anthony Leo out of a shot. Okay? Or, this pass up here, it really takes Trey's ability to make his shot. It takes the percentage down 10%. Trace Jackson Davis. Try taking a deep breath at the free throw line, because that's what most pros do. If you watch the pros, if you watch pitchers in pitching, in baseball, that's what they do. They all take a deep breath. I'm going to tell you that it's your responsibility to discover why. You got a little homework. Let's not try to break a land speed record and see how quickly we can get that ball out of our hands at the foul line. And I've been there, so I know. But it's little things like that. And then the second part would be, you know what? Along the lines of this has been a tough year from many different angles. Let's, you know what? Let's have success. Let's put them in situations where they're going to have success. Let's put them in drills where they're able to compete against themselves, compete against each other a little bit. But nonetheless, let's have them finish before they go home for a while having some success, whatever they're doing. And they need to experience that and go home with a good feeling that their confidence is up and, you know, we want them to miss this place. And I think they will, but we want them to miss this place, be excited to be back, be excited about a staff that is preparing to make them better players, better teammates, and to make Indiana a better program than it was, you know, when they leave here in 3 days.
Rob Finney is a guy you talked to us about a couple weeks ago, just in terms of his potential defensively. And I can remember watching him in high school and thinking, you know, he played for McCutcheon. I remember sophomore season, he took them to the state championship game, ended up losing to Romeo Langford in New Albany. But from that time on, I really followed him as a high school player. I remember watching him with Indiana Elite and thinking this guy can be a really, really good point guard in the Big Ten. And I think, correct me if I'm wrong, those first 2 seasons when he was at Indiana, when he played against Michigan State, he did a really nice job on Cassius Winston. I mean, as good as you could defend Cassius Winston, I felt like Rob Finney did a lot of the things you could do to be successful. This season, I saw a player who at times looked like his confidence was maybe shattered a little bit. Is that something that is kind of the way you talked about him a couple of weeks? I kind of got the sense that there was something, you know, obviously the whole staff is invested in getting him back, but how do you go about getting that confidence back? And am I right that maybe he did lose some of that at the end of this season?
There's no question that Rob lost some of his confidence. I'm literally watching some shots. Rob takes some shots. I mentioned earlier that I was watching a game from 2 years ago. It was at Indiana. And then was watching this year's game at Indiana. And I was surprised at how many shots Rob took where he was moving almost full speed laterally, you know, kind of sideline towards each sideline and getting 3-point shots. And I'm thinking, gosh, you know what? Those are tough shots. Those are hard shots. Those are deep shots. He's on the move. Part of the problem, and the same problem we had at Michigan State this year, is we just did not get a lot of good shots. Just, in other words, like in Rob's case, the 3 or 4 shots he saw him take, his timing was way off. Like when he received the pass, he just had tough conditions to make a shot. He was open. He probably should have shot the 4 that he shot, but they were just hard shots. That was our problem at Michigan State, was we were getting tough shots. And then the other part was we never knew when we were going to get them. So Gabe Brown was a shooter for Michigan State. There'd be one game he'd get 1 shot. There'd be another game he'd get 12 shots. That's hard if you're a shooter. And he wasn't a player. Now, notice I said shooter, not scorer. Gabe Brown needs people to create a shot, you know, to get him open looks, at least the 3-point looks that he's usually going to get at this stage of his career. And so, like in Rob Finney's case, he's cutting around the perimeter. He gets a ball thrown out to him. He's wide open. He's thinking, gosh, you know, I used to, I mean, these were easy. These were routine. My feet aren't set, or I'm not really ready, but I got to get this shot up, not because he's selfish, but because these are my shots. And so, you know, we can sit there and we can blame coaching, but, you know, I think you're kind of, you get stuck in a groove that's hard to get out of with the personnel you have, and for different reasons. And so, to answer your question, yes, I think Rob lost his confidence, but I think there's a really there's a simplistic there's a simple fix that can really help them. I don't know if it's going to bring them all the way back or make them better. I don't know, but I do know that when we watch film together, Rob's going to be thinking. Hopefully, he watches this film, huh? Coach Bozich and Coach Fife are going to be. Yeah, gosh, those were tough shots, man. And so, yeah, even Alex Bozich couldn't make those shots on his Nerf hoop.
Exactly.
Yeah, but Colin could. We got other adjustments we got to make with Colin Bozich.
What can you tell us about what Miller Kopp's going to bring, what Tamar Bates is going to bring, and what Xavier Johnson's going to bring? Because I think those are 3 new players that people are obviously interested in, and they, I think, could have a big impact on just overall next season, what kind of team this is.
Well, I think the first 2, I guess we'll talk about Miller and Xavier. Those are guys that have played at a high level and had success in a Power 5 league. And, Xavier, I think first and foremost, Xavier we need Xavier to make sure that he is the guy that gets to the paint and kicks it out and gets guys open shots, or drops it down and gets Trace easy baskets, gets Race easy baskets. Gets a Rob Finney a step-in 3 where his hips are already square to the basket. He's ready. He hits them on target. He hits them right here, step-in 3, especially an early shot. Those are the things, aside from scoring, that Xavier can do. The other thing Xavier can do is get in the paint and get to the foul line, get to the rim, push it in transition like Rob could. And then you talk about Kopp, a guy that should easily be able to knock down some open threes. But we don't want him to be resigned to that. He's mentioned he wants to become a better rebounder. We're going to do that. We're going to demand that he goes to the class. We're going to demand that he goes after, a ball that careens off the rim, and they call it range rebounding. And then Bates, I think he's a bit of a wild card in a good way, that he can do a lot of really nice things. Maybe compare him to a little bit of Franklin, a little bit of Al Durham, but all into one. And you do got to take into account that he is a freshman, but he's highly touted and comes in with high regard. So I think that all 3 of them will make an impact, if not a couple of them a major impact, but all of them are coming in, and you can expect them to get pretty good minutes, some starter minutes.
I'm looking at the roster right now, and obviously with the portal, we never know when things are completely set and things of that nature, but there's 13 guys, and realistically, I've never seen a college basketball team play 13 guys regularly, so some roles may be different than others. How, with this is kind of a loaded question, but, to me, and I think I agree with my dad a little bit on this, like on the portal, it can be a positive, I guess, but it can also look like an easy way out, right? To go somewhere else and just say, hey, this school is promising me this. It's easier to maybe go somewhere else and feel like you have a better chance rather than staying and grinding it out. So I guess what's Coach Woodson's message been, and your message and the staff's message been to guys in terms of, it's a reset, it's a new chapter about earning an opportunity next year. What are the factors going to be that lead guys to have bigger roles than others?
I think the vets always are leaders in the clubhouse because they understand what it takes to win. They may not always do it, but they at least understand it. So they're going to give you glimpses. They understand there's certain things at the college level or the next level beyond high school that that you need to do in order to not stand out in a bad way, like glaring mistakes. And we are going to have a lot of vets. We got 2 high school kids coming in. But, the things that translate is usually rebounding and scoring to an extent. There's certain types of scorers that translate from level to level. And I think Xavier Johnson and Miller Kopp for sure. And only because I haven't seen enough of Bates to really have a true idea of exactly where I think he can get his baskets in college. Whether that'll translate, but and then there's defense. Defense is kind of a wild card. Defense is really where kids struggle the most, and it's as simple as this. Like, you don't know if your shots are going to go in no matter who you are. But what you need to be able to rely on, the most is defense. And your defense, everybody wants to close their eyes and think of defense on the ball, but it's defense off the ball where kids struggle the most. And it's not just one particular thing. And then it's, are you willing to box out on every possession and go get that rebound? And those are the things I think are going to separate. And every coach is going to say it. And you still need to be able to score. But those are the things where the separation really happens, because I think we've got scorers. I think we've got guys that can score the bulk of our scoring that we can rely on. But I think what we really have to see is who's going to secure the rebound, whether it's offense or defense. Who's going to take care of the ball when it's crunch time? Who's going to be able to hit that open 3 when it matters? Who's going to lead us out of halftime when we're down 12 on the road? Those are the things that are going to make us really good, and those are the things that we're going to look for with everybody.
So you've worked under one of the best coaches in terms of rebounding with Izzo. That was something that's a non-negotiable for him. I've seen a Crean practice, so I'm sure some of the stuff that he learned in terms of rebounding was taught to him by Izzo, but what types of things can you do, I guess, in terms of skill development and working behind the scenes to make somebody a better rebounder? Or is it just a want to?
Well, it's, Coach Izzo always talks about demanding it. We can't just say it. We have to demand it every day. And it's got to be something you can't pick too many things to demand. But at Michigan State, it was rebound, run, and the third one was defend. And defend is a broad term, but I think most people understand whether someone's really attempting to defend or not, just by kind of their verbal and nonverbal cues that they give off. So, the demand part, it has to be a culture it's got to be identified in the culture of the program, in the guts of the program, and it's a character issue, not a character building issue, but it's in your character of whether you give a damn or not to go get that rebound, whether you're going to give it everything you have. And it really is a life skill. It's a commitment. It's a choice. It's something you can control. You don't have to come up with the ball. You just have to go. And we have to believe it's important to you. And that really was a Michigan State philosophy. But I think, the essence of Izzo is not X's and O's. It's I'm going to demand from you skills that are life skills. I mean, when you really get down to it. And those life skills are all choices that you make and that you can control. And if you apply those things to basketball, you apply those skills to the game of basketball, You say you want to be a pro. There's your answer. Right there. If you want to be a pro, you take these life skills and apply them to the game. If you're supposed to be a pro, you'll be a pro. Because those are the things that you have to do, and you got to do it every day.
Last thing I wanted to ask you about was just recruiting in general, and over the last year. I mean, obviously you're getting started here the last couple of weeks at Indiana, but evaluating players right now when you haven't been able to see them in person for now over a year, what tools, I guess, have you used to be able to do that? Is it just, I guess, watching film of high school games or AAU games at this point? And when you get a chance to go back out this summer at some point, how does that change just in terms of how you can recruit and how you can evaluate players being able to, I guess, to get back out on the road? Is that a big deal for being able to recruit?
I think we're going to learn that it's not that complicated. Size, skill, shooting, it's not that complicated. The complication comes in what type of person you're looking for. And, we can change a body. We can make a kid stronger, bigger, probably a little faster. But the character, and we'll make mistakes and we're all flawed, but the character is the important. Yep. The character part is how they handle adversity, how they treat others, what kind of teammate. That stuff really doesn't change, and it still is. You never really know until they get here. So I think we're going to find that a lot of this going out on the road is a lot of this summer stuff is really just a moneymaker and not really necessary. In fact, I think it's hurting people, players, athletes more than it's helping. Physically, academically, probably emotionally. I think that the unintended consequences they're a problem. And I do think that, for the parents out there that might, or the coaches that might suggest that their aspiring student athlete doesn't get looked at if there's no summer. That might be true. But I also think that the every weekend, every 5 days a week of a tournament is totally unnecessary, and actually will work against somebody, work against you in most cases.
Right, because Trace Jackson Davis was going to be able to go to Michigan State or Indiana, whether or not he was playing at Spiece every weekend or not, right?
Yeah, and Trace would probably be, the exception. The people that I'm talking about would be the people that go to a non-Power 5 school that don't necessarily have those measurables. And those are the ones that, I understand it. I understand that part of it. But should there be weekends of AAU and different tournaments? Yes. But I also think it's counterproductive if you have your son or daughter every weekend playing in these tournaments. I think it's counterproductive, and I think science is starting to show that bodies are wearing out by the time they get to their late teens, early 20s. And if pro ball or being a pro is the route, then we've got to take a deeper look into the effects it's having on minds and bodies the way it has.
Well, Dane, I appreciate the time. It was good to talk to you, not actually face to face, but over Zoom, I guess, is as good as we can do for now.
I'd like
I
to
know
keep it that way. I really maybe not want to be around you in person. I kind of like you on Zoom. You're more handsome on Zoom. I think it's because you can. Do you have makeup on? Did you
I
powder
don't.
up? Yes,
don't.
you did. You sandbag and you powdered up.
I knew I wasn't going to get out of here without you ribbing me.
I know Rick Bozich is a powderer. I know that for a fact.
Well, he's the TV guy.
Was Rick Bozich walking next to Bob Baffert the other day?
He was.
That was incredible. I was like, that's Bozich. That's
You watched the Derby?
Yeah, I was on my couch. It just kind of came on. It was in between watching film of last year's Indiana team and looking at some NBA, Absolutely.
Well, thanks for the time. We appreciate it. I'm sure the IU fans are going to appreciate this update, and hopefully catch up with you again maybe in the fall as we get closer to the season. And I can just say as an IU grad and as someone who as a student watched you play, it's good to have somebody back in the program who really cares about the success of IU basketball. And I think it's going to be a good thing moving forward. So welcome back, and it's good to have you on the show.
We're friends until you rip me, Alex. Wait, I think you've already ripped me.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's fine. Let's hang. Let's get together here. We don't need to see you in the fall. I mean, I'd love to just meet up with you in the summer. Let's get crazy.
All right. Well, I don't have a pool. You don't. I mean, you know what? You haven't bought a house yet, right?
No. I'll get a house with a pool. You got to do me a favor, though.
What?
You got to do me a favor. You got to keep that top on.
Okay.
All right.
I
need it. You promise?
Yeah, I'll just
coming over here. You're going you're going to protect your skin from the sun, from the harmful rays, and I'll do the same. It's a deal.
I got to ask you one question. Does the hair? Do you wake up like that, or how long does that take?
Way too long, like 7 to 10 minutes. It's awful, and it's not even a great do. Not even a great do.
Oh yes, it is.
I mean, there's product in there. Oh,
what do you use? What's the product?
Some kind of crew, some kind of paste. It's not even a great do. It's greasy.
No, that's a good head of hair.
Well, I guess if you look at it, I'm not great. I'm not losing it. I'm losing it over here and here, but that's genetics. All right, I gotta go.
All right, take care. Appreciate it. See you.